Somewhere in the black mining hills of Dakota, there lived a young boy named Rocky Raccoon. And one day his woman ran off with another guy.
Chad to Tammy at 11:53 a.m. Well, I've had an interesting morning. I felt I should burn all of the limb debris by the fire pit before it got soaked by the coming storm. While I did so, I spotted a big raccoon along the fence. I hurried and got my gun, and he was still walking along. I got close enough that one shot did the trick. He is now in the pet cemetery. Fun times. Everyone knows the Beatles song, Rocky Raccoon. Well, I was told about 5-6 years ago, that Rocky Raccoon referred to the MK Ultra mind control programs that came out of McGill University in Canada, in which scientists practice really sadistic mind control experiments on people up there who later sued and got a settlement from the Canadian government.
Rocky Raccoon checked into his room only to find Gideon's Bible.
The FBI found the text conversation between Tammy and her husband Chad Daybell on September 9th, 2019, which is the day after the last known sighting of Tylee Ryan in Yellowstone National Park. The text conversation reads as follows. Interesting morning. I felt I should burn all of the limb debris by the fire pit before it got soaked by the coming storm. While I did so, I spotted a big raccoon along the fence. I hurried and got my gun, and he was still walking along. I got close enough that one shot did the trick. He is now in the pet cemetery. Fun times. Chad to Tammy at 11:56. Going to shower now and then go right for a while at BYU. Love you. Tammy to Chad on 2:47. Good for you. Chad to Tammy at 2:48 p.m. I'm back home now. Well, this is just loaded with occultic symbolism, and I'm going to go through it. So what does Rocky Raccoon have to do with the raccoon reference in Chad Daybell's text message to his wife? On the day it is alleged that he participated in the mutilation or dismemberment or burning or disposing of Tylee's body on his premises. Well, I'm going to show you. As it's been noted by Melanie Gibb and in the probable cause affidavit for the search warrant, Lori Vallow Daybell and Chad Daybell affiliated themselves with the Church of the Firstborn, a secret fundamentalist Mormon cult that engages in the twin evils of polygamy and blood atonement. This has been well documented in the books written by the notable author John Krakauer in his books called Under the Banner of Heaven and Predators Prey, both dealing with fundamentalist cults dealing in blood atonement. Warning, this is graphic detail, and I'm just going to flash on a text message of the steps involving in this blood atonement ritual, simply because I don't want to be censored on YouTube. But it does involve slitting the throat from ear to ear, the draining of the blood, sometimes dismemberment, sometimes decapitation, sometimes consuming the blood in a goblet, as well as consuming the burnt holocaust or the burnt body of the victim. It is similar to the Eucharist, but done not as a symbolic ritual, but as a literal ritual. This stems or originates from the ancient civilization of Carthage in North Africa, which now is excavating thousands of child sacrifices, which were used by the Carthaginians to satisfy their gods before they went to war. All of the steps of the blood ritual, as disclosed, thank goodness, by a non-Mormon member, John Krakauer. So Chad is giving a code to Tammy about what he did, and it was a blood atonement ritual. I don't know when this occurred. They said there was a bonfire that morning. Most of these blood atonement rituals are supposed to be done underground or at night. Well, I've had an interesting morning, he says. And the way he does that is he's elated. And these blood atonement rituals do have an addictive quality. People who are known to be blood drinkers, and there's many of them that drink pig blood, etc., they get a rush from consuming plasma. But what I want to point you to is big raccoon. Now, raccoon, as you know, is a nocturnal animal which, when you take video of it, its eyes shine. And this coon reference is to a dark spirit whose light eyes will shine. Coon was also used as a very pejorative, negative name for blacks that were post-Reconstruction because of their black skin, only their eyes lit up at night. And so it has a long history of referring to dark-skinned people, or as in Chad and Lori Daybell's, dark spirits, or as we know, Chad Daybell had a whole menu of different people that had become dark spirits. So Tylee was reputed to have become one of these dark spirits or zombies for the time she was 13, which is when, oh my goodness, you become a teenager. All right? Now I want you to remember the word bloodline or racial politics. One cannot study Mormonism without being completely aware that the early Brigham Young Utah Mormons were completely were pro-slavery. They believed that the black races were inferior. Contrary to my studies, which show the early Joseph Smith Mormonism was a anti-slavery religious group, very much akin to John Brown and all of these other abolitionists that were moving out west, forming voting blocks to vote out slavery. And the reason why the early Mormon church, led by Joseph Smith, was thrown out of Missouri is they formed a voting bloc that was going to vote out slavery. Hence, the violence at the Gallatin voting polls. Very classic. And what occurred was the Quorum of the 12, which formed the Brigham Young Utah group, framed Joseph Smith, had the authorities throw Joseph Smith in jail, and blamed him for violence that he never engaged in. Joseph Smith was just brand new in Missouri by the time this violence broke out at the voting polls, because the Mormon church was voting against slavery. And the Brigham Young Quorum of the 12 were part of, they call it the Border Ruffians. They were vigilantes that caused terrorism throughout the entire Missouri borderlands. So, Joseph Smith, early Joseph Smith, anti-slavery. Brigham Young, pro-slavery. Brigham Young, pro-blood atonement. Joseph Smith, never any indication of any kind of blood atonement. I've read through so many historical documents, absolutely absent. The only thing that there might be some controversy on is the polygamy. But Joseph Smith, from the day to the day he died, denied that he practiced polygamy, and in fact sued every one of these Brigham Young Quorum of the 12 fake Mormons who were practicing polygamy in secret, sued them and required them to come to court, and they all failed to come to court because they are cowards. And that's what we're seeing right now. Just kind of this Utah Brigham Young Mormon church that has been so mixed up in the head. They've been indoctrinated. They've been mind controlled from the time they're very tiny. And these children have no hope of having a normal life. And that's what we find in Chad Daybell. I'm not going to give any sympathy for Chad Daybell because I believe he's a slaving, polygamous nincompoop. He only appeared to love women because that is their polygamous con game. They get women to fall in love with them, and then, just like any street pimp who grooms his young teenage prostitute, once that young teenager falls in love with them, then they assert their control and exploit them and use women for money. And the early Brigham Young polygamy was assaulted or fought against by the U.S. government because it was so clear Brigham Young and the Utah Mormons were using polygamists as a pretext to exploit women, to use them as female slaves, and to prostitute them. I mean, this Western state run by Brigham Young was filled with bloodthirsty, blood atonement criminals and women who were just traumatized beyond belief. So, based on that, look at Lori Daybell. Led somewhat of a normal life until she met Chad Daybell and Melanie Gibb, and then suddenly she becomes like saucer-eyed. You can't, I mean, there's nothing in her brain. She is completely indoctrinated, controlled. And Chad Daybell, I'm sorry, there's nothing in that zombie either. And it's so funny how people project, because they're calling humans zombies, and they who are robotic, who've had their souls sucked out of them because their brain has been completely assaulted and minimized by indoctrination and then probably technologies of mind control, they have become the robots, and yet they're pointing out to the zombies are accusing the humans of being zombies. That is what's so sad about it. And I feel very sad about what's occurred. But you know what? JJ and Kylie should not have been subjected to this. And sometimes it takes just the poignancy of having children sacrifice for the delusions of their very mind-controlled and brain-dead parents to get us as a community to rise up and to start to recognize what is going on in the torture chambers of some of these homes. And it should not be allowed. Unfortunately, we've allowed the inmates and the crazy people to run the asylum. It's got to be turned around, where good people start to exert their influence and to get rid of, I mean, these are truly crazy. If you want to go back on some of these podcasts, oh my gosh, I mean, they exude, they drip. Oh, we love Christ, we're following the Spirit, we're this, we're that. Well, you know what? Schizophrenics follow the Spirit too. They've got voices in their head commanding them to do certain heinous acts, and that's exactly what these Mormons are. They're called walking schizophrenics, or organized walking schizophrenics, and that's what Lori Vallow Daybell became, and that is what Chad Daybell, I believe, from birth, because he has been so damaged by whoever raised him to be just a zombie. And he appears from all outward appearances. That's their shtick. We love women. We want. That's exactly what a pimp does. Grooms his street teenage prostitute. He makes them fall in love with him, and then he brings out the horror of pimping them out. And that's what these Mormon women have been subjected to for so many, well, let's say 200 years since Brigham Young broke off of the Joseph Smith Mormon Church. The Brigham Young were the infiltrators. They were the pro-slavers. Joseph Smith's church was anti-slavery. Look it up. Just look it up. I know the Mormon Church has rewritten history as much as they can, but original documents will always show the truth. Somewhat the truth, because some of the original documents have been destroyed. But there's enough that survive that any honest historian can piece together to show Joseph Smith's Mormon Church was completely different from the Utah Brigham Young Church. Joseph Smith's family rejected Brigham Young. They hated Brigham Young. They hated polygamy. And Brigham Young keeps on trying to bring Joseph Smith into the mixture. But he has smeared Joseph Smith's legacy, who was a pro abolitionist, who was one of the heroes of the civil rights movement, and we are now left with this legacy of assassins and thieves and just horrible people that came out of the Utah Mormon church in Utah. Nothing to do with the Joseph Smith church.